Hello, and welcome to a special PlayStation Unchained. God of War is releasing this very week. Well, as long as you're obviously listening to it in the correct order. It's the first game in the franchise in 6 years, if you count Ascension. There's debate over that. It's taken a bit of a departure from previous games, and of course that caused concern in the previous trailers we've seen and such, but it appears to have been a rousing success, with the game sitting on a Metacritic of 95 right at this moment after 85 reviews.
It went up. It was at a 94.
Yeah. So to mark this occasion, you may remember last year we did this with Horizon Zero Dawn, another big Sony exclusive. We got in the man who wrote the words and played the damn game to talk to us about it. Spoiler free as we can do. We're not going to go ruining it here. This is merely just a general impressions, if you will. Yes. So joining us today is Mr. Kyle Prahl. How you doing, Kyle?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
Not a problem at all. So yeah, we're going to grill you basically about all things Kratos and
sounds good. Sounds good. Yeah, it's been nice. It's like just like with Horizon, it's kind of one of these things where you play the game in a vacuum for review, and the way Sony and PlayStation tend to be with these things, they put them in our hands so early out of the release that this is like I totally know that this is, in terms of gamer problems, this is among the most first world of problems to possibly have. But the feeling of playing a game like this in that vacuum and not being able to talk to anyone about it, you get a little cabin fever with the things or the things that you want to share with people, and just tell folks how cool it is. In this case, thankfully.
Oh yeah, sure. I mean, we had that last year. Luckily, I'd been playing Persona 5 for a while, and then you got a copy before release as well. And it's fine. It's like somebody I could talk to.
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
Oh yeah, it's a mercy. It's a blessing. I think
how quickly did you beat that game, by the way? Just to dial real back, was that like you blitzed that over the course of 2 weeks, right?
Yeah, I think I put in about 94, 95 hours, basically. Yeah,
patently absurd. An absurd amount of time.
I know. There's some games it just happens with. I was saying not long ago that I recalled 2015, where I went from doing Divinity, Original Sin, and then Wasteland 2, and then of course I got Fallout 4 as well. And it's like those 3 RPGs in a row for review.
Back.
And then I tried playing The Witcher 3 afterwards, and that was just the stupidest thing I could have done, because it's like, nope, I'm burnt out.
Yeah, I know that game deserves to not have like you be burned out on RPG goodness before into it.
Definitely,
totally.
We were joking the other day when they announced the release date for Divinity 2 on consoles. And I said, well, it should be all right this time, because it's not like there's going to be a Bethesda RPG coming out in the fall. And of course, rumors today going around that is indeed what's going to be happening. So it's that'll be fun. That'll be great fun.
Good luck to you, sir.
Good luck. One way or another, I want to play that, so that's for sure. But anyway, we're getting off track. It's like we better.
Don't we always?
Oh yes, but I normally get to introduce you guys before we do that. So the rest of you, I should say, as ever, we are joined by Ben Shillabeer-Hall.
Sorry, I zoned out as soon as you said Witcher 3 was good. Now I'm lost.
I never said that.
Can you just leave your recorder on and leave, Ben?
That seems hostile. Like itching for a fight.
It's no Breath of the Wild, to be fair. So we're on here. There you go. I said that on a PlayStation podcast. But so you're here, Ben, as usual. Also joining us as usual is Garri Bagdasarov.
Sup, yo.
Sup and yo. And once again, we can't get rid of him. It is Chris DeVisser.
I'm very glad. I'm very hard to throw out, like that one broken antique record player that doesn't really do anything anymore, but you keep it out of sheer spite for your aunt.
Yeah, because it's kind of heavy, and it's like moving it might put you back out.
Yeah, awkward.
Like personal experience.
So yeah, we are going to go round table style and grill Kyle on all things God of War. Of course, we may ask questions he cannot answer, and he will truly tell us, look, we are not getting that answer. Probably more politely than most of us would say. So Chris, I'm gonna let you go first.
Oh, goody! I was actually hoping for that. So I would, because I want to avoid as many story spoilers as possible. I would like to know though how you feel about the combat. How you like it because of being different, obviously, than the old God of War games. Improved, what you liked, what you didn't like, because that's pretty much the core of the gameplay is the combat. So I'd like to hear you talk about that first.
Yeah, that sounds good. I think when I was writing the review, I never really set out to cover, all 10 elements of a game in detail. I more so tend to fall into pillars, and in the case of God of War, combat was like one of those 3 pillars. For me, it was combat and the relationship between Kratos and Atreus, and then the third pillar would have been kind of its open world, like RPG elements. So yeah, this kind of fits nicely with the way I already had my thoughts organized. So with combat, of course, the biggest thing that strikes you right away is the new perspective. Right off the bat, that over-the-shoulder camera. It's easy to compare it to other games, right? It feels a lot like Resident Evil 4. It's very pulled in. The level design kind of fits that template as well, where it's sort of linear, but there's Metroidvania overlapping to it, and there's an opportunity to explore. But within combat specifically, it was definitely a big adjustment. What starts off though feeling like a restriction ends up being what lends the combat its uniqueness. So that perspective, it's so tight over Kratos' shoulder, and his field of view is comparatively narrow. Versus the fixed cameras of his past games, which were all action platformers and just had that kind of, here's your stage, and you can see every enemy, and you can see them at all times and where they're approaching from. This challenges you instead to think about how in any given arena, you've got enemies coming from one angle, or you first arrive at the arena and you're kind of scoping things out. I see ranged foes up on that cliff. I see this heavy enemy type spawning in the corner. Okay, I don't want to ever have my back to this wall because that wall looks like a place where enemies could come from. And so you it feels restrictive at first and almost a little unfair before you get used to it, because you're like, well, what the hell? I'm getting hit from off screen. Granted, not often, but occasionally you're getting hit by things you can't see. But over time, you come to, and it's almost instinctual too. You just start to better understand the space around you, and you develop a sixth sense for where enemies could be coming from. Or, okay, I saw that enemy type 5 seconds ago, it's behind me now, and now feels like about the time when it would be throwing a fireball at me. Sure enough, here it comes. And you just kind of build into that over time. And so it ends up being a source of challenge, that over-the-shoulder camera, and suddenly the onus is on you to manage space, to use crowd control, to freeze or stun enemies where you can, so that you don't have to worry about them for a few seconds. You can shift your focus to something else. And all of that's happening in these sort of split-second, moment-to-moment decisions. The sum total of which is that combat is really intense. It's not repetitive in the way that maybe you might fear from seeing trailers, which, as you might imagine, are just incredibly focused on the first 30 minutes of the game, right? The single light swing and heavy swing that you see Kratos use in the trailer is just the tip of the iceberg. And what I really loved is that when you unlock these abilities, these light and heavy runic attacks, and you start amplifying them with enchantments, you start changing them alongside your equipment between battles, and you just start to I hate to liken everything back to MMOs, but you'll probably hear me do that somewhat often because I just know that genre really well. But I could recognize situations where using area of effect attacks or single target heavy attacks would be more beneficial, and so swapping those things out and making those decisions and then actually using them in the heat of it, it's really, really cool to piece that all together.
Nice, very nice. So the rest of the world will be wanting to set our sensitivity to high, but Garri will still play on the low sensitivity and get killed summarily.
Well, yeah, that's so I never and this is rare for me, I never once touched any of the camera controls or any of the controller controls throughout the entire playthrough. In fact, I don't think I even looked at the menu until like I was 20 or 25 hours in, and that's super rare for me. I usually dive right in and be like, okay, how can I customize this? Usually, if there's any way to move something off of L3, I'll do that right away, which has been a weird tick for me since the days of Call of Duty when I just sprinted for the first time, and I'm like, this doesn't feel right. Unfortunately, you can't change that. But yeah, no, the sensitivity is, well, that's funky because that's also something I had to wrangle with a little bit, the camera. It's generally very, very smart at staying focused on the thing that you're hitting. Like, it's hard to verbalize maybe without demonstrating it, but it's over the shoulder, right? I keep going back to that Resident Evil analogy. And if you move toward an enemy or you start to swing, it kind of soft locks onto them. So even if I'm not hard blocking by clicking R3, it's still going to keep the thing I'm hitting in focus. But if I want to, say, while I'm hitting this Draugr with a heavy attack, I want to kind of look to my left and just keep an eye on what's going on with that guy, I can still kind of do that. And because he's in mid-swing, Kratos will continue swinging in the same direction you started in. So it generally works really well. You can immediately turn 180 degrees by hitting down on the D-pad. Which is huge. Like, as soon as I discovered that, I was using it constantly. It just helps you better keep track of your surroundings. But yeah, control-wise, sensitivity-wise, I never found a reason to change all those things. I think they were dialed in perfectly from the start.
Oh, very, very cool. It's cool that they put the time and effort into making it that, precise. Most games are a bit more like, no, here's all the things you can customize. Just jump in, see how you like it, and here, change whatever you need to. So it's very rare that I think game developers spend enough time fine-tuning their default controls so
Definitely.
that everybody can enjoy them. So yeah, that's really cool.
This really reeks of... Oh, I'm sorry. I cut you off there.
Go for it.
I was just going to say that the game really does reek of like really, really robust playtesting. Even in the fringes, like there's side quests and optional content. There's every review kind of talks about that, and within some of those quests are challenges that are notably more difficult than what the main scenario would put you through. And even within, like, I keep looking for signs of like the ways that I can game the system, if that makes sense. Like there might be an area where there's enemies that all drop like one type of crafting resource. I'm trying to come up with an example so I don't spoil anything that I don't have to. Yeah. But I'll go to that place and expecting like, okay, where's the OP strategy? Like where's the thing that all of the guides and walkthroughs will say, okay, here's where you go to level up quickly. Here's where you go to earn XP or cash quickly. And there isn't really that, and I'm okay with it. Like even areas where there's a ton of enemies that you can kill quickly because of their light types or they're small, whatever they are, it always feels like the rewards you're being dealt and the pace of XP that you're earning from those things is like perfectly tailored so that you can't kind of break the game and level up quickly or jack all your gear up by finding the one arena and just grinding it over and over again. So design-wise, it feels like they really put a lot of attention into, okay, here's a trouble spot where players could sort of abuse or exploit the reward system. Now, how do we fix that?
Nice. Mm-hmm. Okay, very cool. My last question I had is, I one of the things that everybody was like wondering about, like Kratos doesn't have his Blades of Chaos or Blades of Exile or that anymore. He has this axe. I'm guessing there's some spoilerish story elements to that. But I guess more what I want to know as far as like combat goes. I mean, the axe, his new iconic weapon. How is it? Yeah. What did you like about it? What didn't you like about his new axe?
Oh man, there's so much to love about it, and it dovetails so nicely with all the other things in the game. Like just for starters, with light attacks and heavy attacks, there's just the right amount of camera shake with each hit, and the sound design just so well nails the crunching and the grinding of metal. I actually mentioned this in my review because it left such an impression on me. That axe just feels so hefty and powerful because it's colliding with enemies and they're getting like their jaws are being whipped to the side or they're crumbling under the weight of it in a very realistic fashion. So it's incredibly satisfying to use from like a visual and a sound standpoint. But even with combos and combo fluidity, like it does start off really simple. I think it takes probably 5 or 10 hours for some of the layers to start to get peeled back on combat's complexity. But once you start kind of diving into the skill tree and opening up really just combo extensions, like the skill tree is that in a major way. It's combo extensions. It's okay, you had a basic 4-hit light attack combo. Now if you use R2 on the last hit of that combo instead of R1 a fourth time, you'll have a frosty ice explosion, right? Or if you tap R1 twice and then pause a half second after the second swing, Kratos will change stances. Now you can whip the axe around you in like a floaty circle, actually kind of reminiscent of like the area of effect Blades of Chaos attacks from the original game.
Okay.
Or even off of that, like it can branch in 2 directions. So you pause a half second, he changes stances. You can whip the axe around you in a circle, or with R2, sort of chuck it forward and have it rotate into a single target with heavier damage. So you're always kind of making these split-second decisions about, okay, here is the enemy or enemies I'm facing. Here's how they're positioned in relation to me. What is the quickest way I can either attack them or defend myself? And sometimes it's both, of course. And so as you just unlock those trees, like anytime I had skill points to spend, it was always, all right, dive into the axe tree. What can I, like, what's cool? I was always revisiting it and like actually practicing those moves. You don't need to have enemies in front of you to sort of string the combos together. You can just do it on air. And so I actually, like, for decent 10 or 20 minute chunks throughout the game, I'd sort of just stand in place and try to piece together the new moves I've learned to make sure that I was kind of getting the muscle memory of it down.
Sounds like they succeeded where, as Garri well knows, Extinction failed then. Sounds like the combat, actually, you want to have variety. It forces you to have that variety, and it does it well instead of, you like I know Garri did with his Extinction review, is the one square, wait, square combo that he used to kill everything.
It just breaks everything, yeah. Yeah, I gotta give huge props to enemy variety, and not just in how they look and their monster designs and attacks, but there really isn't a one-size-fits-all combo that's best for every situation. It's so well designed in that respect, and Atreus himself sometimes factors into that as well. Like, there are enemy types where without his arrows timed at certain moments, you're just going to die. Like, you don't have other ways to interrupt them. So, you know, even down to his level and the way they use the boy in combat, it's just really thoughtfully designed.
I'm glad they put thought into using the boy in combat.
Yeah,
that makes me happy.
And you grab him by his limbs and you throw him into the crowd, and
Toss him around.
That's actually OP. I lied. That's the best move.
Now I want to see this.
Wait, you can pull Wolverine and the Colossus throw?
Yes, exactly.
That's fantastic.
No,
I gotta be honest. I'm just being hyperbolic at this point. You can't literally throw Atreus into a crowd of boy. Although Kratos does say "boy" in a deep, gruff voice a lot. It's definitely going to be the meme of this game, I think.
Boy.
Well, he's kind of gruff like that, right? I mean, he'll call him Atreus occasionally, but boy it sort of is emblematic of how detached and gruff he can be, I guess.
Yeah, which, given his past, is pretty fair, to be honest. It's he's not the best people person at the best of times. So
exactly.
Is it? That's
it for me. So I was Thank you for covering the combat. I was really curious about that. So that sounds like it's going to be a lot of fun.
I would say, closing thought on that pillar. The only ways in which it fell a little short for me, and this was maybe one area among really any where I think I differed a little bit from other reviews, is that I thought very occasionally, right? I've said the combat is excellent, and it truly is. But in a game this large, there are occasional encounters where I can sort of see the seams of the encounter design, where it's like, oh, you just spawned those enemies behind that pillar because most players aren't going to notice that, and they're going to get some cheap shots in on you from behind. Or there's, every so often you can get stuck in a corner, and because all these enemies have physical bodies, you can't like roll out of it, and they're kind of stun locking you by attacking at the same time, and that doesn't feel good either. So I'd say like a handful of times, maybe 4 or 5 throughout my game, I had these moments where it kind of like the simulation sort of fell apart in that way. But yeah.
Cool.
All right.
Just to extend upon the combat there, I remember. Obviously, it sounds very much more intimate now, and close in compared to the very sprawling, open sort of epic style you had of God of War's past. Does it still manage to retain the feeling of having these, big grandiose battles when the time does come for such things? Yeah.
I would say yes. I would say just by its nature, the story this game is trying to tell, and the more it's more mature or realistic approach to this storytelling. Like it is a more grounded game, but it does also have its moments of epic scale. To be totally honest, I've not finished. Which games have I finished? I think I've finished the first God of War and maybe Chains of Olympus on PSP. So I've just dabbled in the series prior to this, I know it for those big epic, like legacy blockbuster moments. And this game has its fair share of those. So you definitely don't miss out on the grandiosity or the spectacle of combat. I think what makes this a little different though is that because Kratos is trying to teach or mentor his son, and he's trying to teach him how to survive in this world, he's trying to also hide parts of himself, his aged, ferocious past. It's like every battle to me felt that much more meaningful because you just always, at least if you get as into game storylines as I do, or you get as immersed in them as I do, like I always had the feeling that Atreus was watching me and maybe judging me a little bit as a child might judge a parent who he doesn't actually know very much about and who is clearly hiding something or being detached on purpose. And so that's what felt so cool about like those moments where I'm using the axe to just brutalize a foe. It gives you that like God of War adrenaline rush of these just insane finishers, but you also just feel the slightest bit guilty because Atreus is there and ostensibly you're not supposed to kill things that don't deserve it. And even Kratos himself feels a little burdened by that fact. So I think the story and combat bleed into each other really nicely like that, where you have to fight and you have to be brutal because that's the only way to survive. But even as a player, I wasn't always like completely on board with how strong Kratos is at times.
Daddy, where did you learn to do that? Go get this. Go fetch this.
Boy, don't ask.
Boy, go fetch this, boy. Don't ask questions.
You just use the one punch excuse. It's like I just trained really hard. That's it. Why I'm bold.
I did 100 push-ups a day for a year.
100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, a 10K jog, and I killed some gods at one point. So, go hunt some rabbit for dinner. All right.
Cool. Gary, I suppose next. Do you have a question?
I do. I have a few. Some are probably easy to answer. They're more technical ones. Are you able to change the buttons in that game at all? Like, can I switch my R1 attack to like square or triangle instead?
Gosh, I'm trying to think. I want to say you can't, but what I think you actually maybe can do is flip them. Like it might be possible to put heavy on R1 and light on R2 or something like that. But as far as switching them to face buttons, you definitely can't go to like every control and remap it to something else. I'm sorry, I don't have the game in front of me already to be able to answer it very easily, but there's a minor customization, but in general, I would say not much. You're pretty stuck with what they give you.
Okay. My other question kind of goes back to the camera during combat a little bit. How often did you encounter moments where the camera kind of got stuck? Like you said, you can get cornered. Does the camera kind of go through the wall, or does it like do some crazy thing where it's super zoomed in?
At its absolute worst, like if Kratos is backed up firmly against a wall, like he can't back up anymore into it, the camera will sort of it never passes through him to just show what's in front of him, so it more or less just gets stuck behind his back, showing even less, of what's in front of him. I'd say that happened 4 times in my playthrough, and it was frustrating because when it tended to happen, it was because I was dodging left, right, and backward away from foes and unwittingly dodging myself into a corner. So I mentioned in the review that those moments, they're arguably preventable, like with proper managing your space and being aware of your surroundings and using the right attacks, you'll never have to worry about it. But I did occasionally back myself into a corner, and then it was just a little hard to get out because like there'd be maybe 3 joggers in front of me, and I can't roll away from them because they're physically blocking me from doing that, and they're smacking me 4 or 5 times without a chance to block because of just how the things interplay with each other.
I see. My other question about the camera is, you mentioned like you can easily like get hit. There's almost no way to avoid it. Is the camera essentially stuck with Kratos's movements, or can you rotate the camera individually? Like in Resident Evil, for example, you can rotate the camera and like look in front of the person, like see their front. Or is it specifically when Kratos turns, the camera turns with him, like it's attached to him? Like the reason I'm asking is if you're doing a combo on somebody, can you rotate the camera and like see what's coming up behind you or on your left hand side or your right hand side while you're doing a combo on one enemy?
Yes, you can. And actually, from what I recall of Resident Evil 4, it's extremely similar. So if you're standing still out in the world, you can spin the camera 360, look at Kratos' front, etc. If you're running forward, the camera sort of becomes your turning, if that makes sense. Like you can, like left stick is your strafe, left, right, forward, back, and then your camera you more or less use to kind of turn as you're running forward. And then in combat, it's sort of like, let's say I'm surrounded by enemies and I'm striking the one in front of me with just light swings with the Leviathan axe. While those swings are happening, I can spin the camera to my right or even as far as behind Kratos. If I keep tapping R1, I think the next swing he'll kind of cut and start doing it in the way the camera's pointing. So you can kind of point the camera to sort of indicate the direction you're trying to swing, and then if there's an enemy anywhere near where you're facing, he's pretty smart about hitting that one and not just hitting air, you know? So there's kind of like a soft lock, like always happening. But also within combat, like if I'm sprinting toward a troll or something on the far side of the arena, the right stick sort of acts as my turning mechanism there as well. So as far as how that goes in practice, I think, again, from what I recall of RE4, it's very similar to that, but not as tanky, right? You've got full left, right, forward, back, strafe motion with the left stick.
Okay. I see. How does his son affect combat outside of just kind of stunning an enemy, like shooting an arrow and stuff like that? Like, does he give out hints about when you're about to get hit or what an enemy is about to do? Like in Hellblade, for example, the voices that Senua was hearing will scream out, like, look out, and you'll know that somebody's about to attack you. It was a cool little thing they added. Does he do things like that so you aren't forced to take hits that you probably should be able to avoid easily?
Yeah, I'm really glad you asked that, because he does. There's a lot of depth to him that kind of gets peeled back as the game goes on. For starters, in terms of dialogue, he absolutely does call out attacks. Like, he will yell, behind you, or fire from the left. Like, he's pretty actually descriptive about things that are happening, and the game triggers them at exactly the right moments. So if I hear fire from the left, I'll swivel to the left, and sure enough, there's an ice chunk or a fireball coming at me from that direction or behind me. Like, he's really good about calling out things that are about to hit me. There's also, just as a side note, there's kind of these arrow indicators that appear on Kratos when something is coming from off camera. I didn't mention that before, maybe I should have. So like if an enemy is within your vicinity, so I don't know, maybe roughly 15, 20 yards within you, behind you, you'll see like a white arrow kind of in their direction. If they are using an attack on you, you'll see a red arrow. So that's your key to like swivel around with that D-pad down to turn 180 degrees, or just react to that, maybe dodge in some fashion. That's pretty accurate in general, so you can avoid damage like that. But then with Atreus specifically, he's got the voices, he's got the dialogue, but then also he's got his own upgrade path, his own upgrade skill trees, so you can increase the stun damage of his arrows, increase the firing rate. He'll also perform some melee moves that are really beneficial to you, so you can unlock skills for him where he will hop up on top of enemies and sort of put them in a chokehold with his bow. And in that position, if I have, for example, another skill on Kratos' tree, I can launch that enemy. So he's strangling a Draugr, Kratos comes up, launches it from below with a Leviathan Axe uppercut, and then I've unlocked a skill with Atreus where, because I've launched this enemy and he was choking it, now he'll like bounce off of it and like quickly fire 3 arrows into its head or something like that. So you can kind of chain these things together with the right skill upgrades, and he becomes extremely useful. Like, I haven't maybe said it enough, but the game is legitimately challenging. Probably along the lines of Horizon, maybe even a bit harder. Like, I was pretty impressed with how Horizon maintained a decent level of difficulty throughout. It never felt like you were just, to me at least, dominating everything and nothing could put up a challenge. God of War is very much that, except even harder. So the ways Atreus can interact with you, his melee chokeholds and the arrow upgrades you get are super valuable.
Is he like invincible during combat, or can he get knocked out and you have to go up and revive him?
Yeah, so he can get knocked out. Although it only happened to me maybe 7 or 8 times throughout the whole game, or even if he was knocked out, maybe I just didn't notice it. He can get knocked out and he'll be out of commission for a very brief amount of time, like maybe 8 seconds, 10 seconds, and he'll get back up on his own. So I don't think you can bring him up sooner than that, but like I said, he's up pretty quick, and he can take a lot of hits, and he's also very good at dodging hits, and for the most part, enemies focus on you anyway, so he's more or less always available when you need him to be, and you don't have to babysit him.
Nice. Question about exploration then.
Sure.
How big are the areas you get to explore? Like, we saw, like, when they first announced the game, it's like this foresty area. You can, It looks like you can go off the beaten path. I'm assuming it's not crazy open world, but some areas may be open. What's the ratio between it being open like that and more linear paths that you go through?
I would say the ratio is probably something like 30% very open world and like 70% kind of linear open, like a Zelda style game. That's actually a pretty good comparison because the discrete areas that the story takes you, they've got that sense of openness, like you mentioned from the trailer. The opening forest area kind of feels that way because there are clearly alternate pathways. That just builds and builds as you go throughout the game. So areas will always sort of funnel you forward. Mass Effect 2 might be another apt example where you're always kind of moving in the direction they want you to, but there's a bunch of opportunity to, all right, I'm going to turn right here, and there's an optional puzzle that players would never even have to do if they didn't notice it, or there's secret pathways you can unlock by piecing together how the axe can interact with the environment. So the levels sort of crisscross and layer on top of each other in a nice Zelda-esque way. And I would say, yeah, in terms of a ratio, probably 65-70% of the game takes place within those discrete areas, and then another maybe 30% is like the big open world section that more or less just exists for you to travel from one of those areas to the other. To use another Zelda analogy, like Hyrule Field might be a good comparison for that.
So you are able to revisit areas you've already been to?
Yep, you can revisit at some point in the journey. You'll be able to revisit or backtrack to anywhere you've been to.
Awesome. Are there, I don't know if you can answer this, are there certain areas you just can't access early on because Kratos needs some sort of upgrade or something?
Yeah.
So you'll have to come back to it later?
Yep, definitely. And they're generally pretty easy to see, like, oh, wonder what this vine that has like a really special color means, you know what I mean? Or, here's an ancient artifact that looks really important, but I can't seem to do anything to it. So, and there's a chest on the other side of it. Like, sometimes it's pretty visually obvious. Like, I knew within the first couple hours, I'm like, oh, it's going to be like Arkham Asylum or insert Metroidvania type structure here.
Like I said, it makes me think of Darksiders.
Yeah, I saw the comparison in a couple of reviews. I haven't played that myself, but that's probably an apt one. So throughout the course of the game, as I kind of said on the front end, it took me a little over 30 hours to finish the game, doing a pretty robust playthrough of side quests and so forth. And within that time, I'd say you're getting some new navigational ability like that roughly every 6 or 7 hours. So there's ample reason to keep returning to old areas. But then also, even when you think you've seen how big the world is at one point, that might not be how big the world is either. So,
speaking of side quests, then, can you say, like, how is there like a ton of them, or are there just like some few here, few there, and how meaningful are the side quests? Like, are they Witcher 3 meaningful, or are they MMO meaningful?
Definitely. Right. No, that's totally fair. They are relatively few in number. I'd say, I don't really even feel like putting a number on it, but compared to most open world games, even something like Horizon, it's definitely less than that. It's not trying to be this open world RPG with a ton of rando things to do, because that's not really who Kratos is. It's not who he wants Atreus to be. They have a quest, they have a mission, and when they veer off that beaten path because you are telling them to, there's always like a rhetoric or a reason for doing it. Like, Kratos can talk himself into it because they need resources for their journey or whatever. So there's not a ton. And then in terms of being meaningful and meaty, I think they're among the most meaningful and well-written side quests I've ever played in an open world game like this. That comes largely from how interesting and well-written Kratos and Atreus are, because the first couple of side quests that I did, I was like, oh, dang, like, there is really good writing and really good character development in this side diversion. Like, that's not even part of the main story. And then I started to be like, okay, I need to do all of these, because literally all of them are a chance to hear Kratos and Atreus talk to each other like a father and son still getting to know each other. It's never just commenting on the thing that they're doing. I mean, some of it is that. Some of it is, I want to go and help these people. We don't have time for that kind of thing. But it's always still grounded in this developing relationship between them. And so you just get more of that flavor from doing the side quests. And because there's not too many of them, it's not like an intimidating thing. Like, I pretty much just did them as they came across my lap. And before I knew it, I was towards the end of the game, and I'm like, oh, there's only like 2 of these that I haven't done. So I'd say they're well worth seeking out for the loot and the XP and the rewards, definitely. But the main reason I did them is because I just wanted to have Kratos and Atreus spend more time together. I basically wanted their journey to be longer, so I went and did those.
Are some of them like time constrained in a way where, like, if you don't do it at a certain time, you can't do it again?
That has not been my experience, but I guess because I did them as soon as they were available to me, it'd be difficult for me to say, like, retroactively whether I could have left some sitting there. My guess is they are all still doable in some fashion, though, just from some other, I don't know, I'm kind of piecing together some things in my head about how it could work out, and I would say I'm reasonably confident that you don't need to feel rushed to do them. The game tends to make a point of, like, even in the middle of the main story, well, we could do this, but there's time to explore, so they're never trying to, like, push you away from them, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. I guess my last question would be, you probably can't answer this, but is there New Game Plus?
I would be able to answer it, but I don't feel like answering it. Sony hasn't said one way or the other on something like that, but I feel like that's just one of those things that is part of the journey, right? It's best the more unknown past like hour 15, the better, in my opinion. So
Okay.
What I've seen is it's not. I don't know exactly what it means, but I've seen the fact that it's not a normal New Game Plus. If it is the thing,
Yeah. Corey Barlow said that as much as that basically. Yeah.
I will say though, like related to that, and I've tweeted about this. It's something I don't mind sharing. Actually, is that there's a lot of stuff to do toward the end of the game in general, like the kind of activities you would normally consider to be, I don't know, like I'm not sure if the other God of War games had something like this, but optional challenges that are like notably harder than everything else, or opportunities to grind for gear and materials past what the game would ever require of you. There's that tradition is well and alive. So I've been playing I've been playing the game even after finishing it, like all this week, because there's still stuff that I wanted to do that wasn't really unearthed to me until the game drew near to its conclusion.
To be honest, no wonder you're comparing it to an MMO, because that just sounds like an MMO system where the actual sort of hard stuff is right at the end after reach end game.
Yeah, to be honest, there's definitely a lot of this game that was informed from MMOs. Like it's got like its tiers of gear are common, uncommon, legendary, and epic, with the colors you would expect for each of those tiers. Excuse me. There's a level of gear and attributes and abilities that the game is never hard enough to ask of you that is still technically attainable if you were to keep going. But what's funky about this game is because it's this hardcore, very skill-based action game, it's like so much more exhausting to chase those things than it is with like Final Fantasy XIV or something like that. With an MMO, you can more or less just lean back in your office chair and mindlessly grind for a couple hours. Here, I'm like, my hands are legitimately tired from all the fighting and all like the intense focus I've had to bring to these challenges.
Oh man, I think the best thing about Sony games like that with the single player stuff has been that sort of having the stuff that a lot of games are using as an excuse to have microtransactions, but they're here as a genuine reward. Very much a throwback to what used to be with that sort of thing in games. So it's very pleasing to hear that it follows on from the likes of Horizon and having like different tiers of stuff and buy stuff to get it. So
there is a minor room for improvement there too as well. I mean, these are really just the two issues I have with the game in general. The combat quirks I've already mentioned to you guys. The other was that in terms of being this, like, we've played so many open world games in recent years, and Horizon was like a really good recent example counterpoint for me with this game, where it's like you can kind of feel that it's Santa Monica Studios' first real foray into open world gaming, because there's some quirky progression things, like cases where there's gear waiting for you at the end of a quest line, but it's like way harder to beat that quest than the gear you get as a reward, like, or you know, the materials to upgrade one kind of gear are just very strange, and you haven't encountered that yet, and the game doesn't offer any explanation as to where or how you get those. And so the general answer just keep playing. Like, it all eventually sort of becomes clear how these things relate to each other. But I found that, especially coming from an MMO standpoint, I found that to be a little aimless and a little frustrating, because I always wanted to like have the most cutting edge gear at whatever level I was, but the game would put things in front of me, and it was kind of unclear, like, okay, should I go and do that side quest now? Like, that gear seems good, but I'm also not having trouble killing things at the moment. And then I go back to that side quest later and find out, oh my god, this is the hardest stuff in the game. Why are those rewards only like level 4? And so it just, the pacing and progression of it is a little quirky at times.
Right. But it doesn't affect the main game so much.
No, not really. You can definitely just kind of mainline the critical path, and certainly you want to stay up to date with your stuff and go out of your way to find those kind of hidden chests, those puzzles that contain upgrade materials and so forth. But it more comes from a character planning standpoint. Like, I just wanted as much information or as much control as possible, and it's more a game that just wants you to keep playing and not think about it too much, and then go back to it later and be like, oh, I've got everything I need already.
Fair enough. Yeah, it's tricky to sort of keep the veil, over everything like that. And as you said, when it's the company's first foray into something that's more open, it does make that a lot harder for them to sort of understand if they don't have enough people that understand how that works. Yeah, I agree with you on Horizon that it had aspects like that where it was just like, you can see the seams, as it were. Yeah.
Right.
Excellent. Ben, did you have any questions?
Most of my questions have been answered already, but I do want to ask, I'm really sick of open world games, and you pretty much answered my question about how big the world is. But there's one thing that pesters me more about open world games than the fact that they're open world. And that is collectibles.
Yeah.
Now, are we talking like Horizon, okay, level of collectibles? Are we talking Ubisoft, I want to kill myself and I'm just throwing the game away collectibles?
Way more of the Horizon camp, and maybe even a little slimmer. Horizon had I'm trying to remember now. It had 30 metal flowers and 40 illusions of the past, these holographic videos, and it had clear lists of things to find. God of War kind of has that in the form of there are some 50 odd treasure chests in the game, or there are 60 of this thing, but there's only a couple of those. I think completion, or 100% completion of the game, will more come from, sure, you'll have to backtrack and find the treasure chests you didn't get on the first time through because you didn't have the abilities or whatnot. And I think a lot of people who are chasing the Platinum Trophy will, probably get a guide or a walkthrough to point those out. But it's a lot less arduous than something like Horizon, even, because there's only maybe one or two objects that actually require you to. They're just these little nitpicky things hidden in the world that you'd never find all of them on your own.
No, about that. Let's just say you can't be bothered to get them. Would that affect your gameplay experience too much? Or is the gear from the chests some of the better gear, if it actually gives you gear?
I think it's important for any player of the game to stay mindful of secrets as they're playing through it. I don't want to put a number on it per se, but I was pretty thorough with any new area that the story took me to, just in general, looking high, looking low for anything that, and the level design really plays into this nicely, by the way, because a lot of times it will put sort of tempting things in your sightline, how is there a treasure chest on a platform 50 yards up in the sky over there, and then it just tempts you, right? You want to figure out how to get there, and I'd say about 65% of the time you can find your way there even on your first time through an area. It's pretty good about not just being sorry, come back later.
Thank you, come again.
So yes, but with regards to what's important to find, or can you get through the game without those things, the game was still decently challenging for me, even being super thorough with finding those chests and those upgrades. But I also think that I wasn't the smartest spender, so I'd get currency and I'd get materials from these side quests and just being thorough about my exploration. But I also spent some of that stuff on gear upgrades that I didn't use nor really have any intention of using. I was just kind of being a spendy completionist from the get-go. So I think if you were to play through it just kind of inquisitive, keep an eye out for pathways that look like they're veering off from the main one, just keep an eye out for those openings. I think you'll do just fine.
Okay.
See, I'm a diehard completionist, so that sounds perfectly up my alley. I hate when games have just a ridiculous amount of collectibles, not because I get tired of them, but because my OCD forces me to complete them. I'm in a place where the only things I really have left to do in the game from a completion standpoint is mark some of those checklist items off, the items I was alluding to earlier, the few things that I would call collectibles. I don't have all those yet, but I have triumphed over the other sort of gold trophies, that, if that makes sense. And from a completionist standpoint, yeah, it's a great game in that you're not just running around for a weekend following a GameFAQs guide, because A, they don't exist at the moment, but B, it's not really that kind of game. You triumph and you get your trophies and your achievements largely because of your skill, triumphing over some things. And then there's just some cleanup ones besides that.
Well, thank you.
But don't look at the trophy list.
I kind of already did.
All right, well, Say no more then.
Keep it to yourself. That's
Well, I'm not saying anything more than that, but I clicked it by accident, and now I know.
By accident?
As Ben does. Everything happens.
I tripped, fell, and landed on his trophy list. It just happens.
Not what it looks like. Okay, any questions to wrap up from anyone? I'll take the deafening silence as a confirmation.
Yeah, I mean, that's like just a couple of closing thoughts. I mean, I think we covered off everything in the review pretty well. I think it's just what struck me about it is as I got into playing, I'm like, well, this feels like Resident Evil. This feels like Arkham Asylum. This feels like The Last of Us. Like, it definitely borrows things from mature, thoughtful, intelligent games of like the past half decade or so. But sure. What really struck me is that after a dozen or so hours, I realized it all feels new and fresh here because it has some one thing those other games don't, and that's the relationship between Kratos and Atreus, and that fuels the entire experience. It makes combat have more oomph to it. It makes the open world exploration. It makes you want to explore the open world, not just for the loot. It's for furthering that relationship, and it's an incredibly well written, thoughtful story. Like, very, very tight, very focused, and it absolutely nails the one thing it's trying to do, which is paint this relationship and teach you something about parenthood, or about passing things on, or about dealing with the sins of your past. So that's how it really strikes away on its own and becomes this unique and awesome PlayStation adventure that, to me, stands right alongside Horizon as this spectacular, not truly a debut, but this PS4 masterpiece, really. I was reflecting back on my favorite PS4 games thus far, and I think it looks something like Persona 5, Uncharted 4, Horizon, and God of War. It's kind of a toss-up, honestly, and I loved Horizon, and it came out of nowhere to really surprise me, and so did this game.
Yeah, I think that just kind of speaks to what Sony has done this generation, and in investing in their games, and it's more than just having the simplified console where everything works a bit better. The fact they've just gone all out and probably had the best lineup of games they've had for many years, it seems to be adding to it, which is wonderful to see. Yes, yeah. So, thank you, Kyle, for that. That was great to hear all about it.
Thanks, guys. Good questions.
Yeah, it's going to be exciting for the next few days as we await that release date, which I think is between Thursday and Friday, depending on where you are. And yes, damn it.
A lot of big games releasing on Fridays these days.
Well, that's because that's the standard release for England.
It used to be, yeah.
Oh man, here is always Tuesday. Only Nintendo released on Fridays.
So it always used to be a Friday here, mainly because of the fact that we're an island. So to make sure that all the stores are stocked, by the end of the week, they made sure the game releases were always Fridays because of that.
Wow.
Yeah, in the age of digital games, it's less of a thing. I think it's just a case of we're having it for this day.
It's just because it's standard now.
Yeah, I think
the fact that people are more likely to spend money on the Friday because they're going to have the weekend off.
Yeah, that's very true, and I'm sure there'll be a fair few people doing that this week. Myself included.
Excellent. I'm really excited for you guys to have this experience. I seriously am.
Yeah, I mean, we may come back to this.
One second. Didn't Alfonso have a question?
He did. I'm sure it might have been covered, though. That's the only thing. I will double check. Sorry, I've got like 3 Twitter accounts to go through here, so I'm trying to find the one that actually
Don't worry, I've switched over to Thingamajigs on my phone.
Thingamajigs? So yeah,
I don't know if you can answer this one. It's kind of very spoilery.
This is what sort of I was a bit apprehensive about because it is very. I
read the question. And I forgot what it was.
So what does he ask? I saw it in my mentions, but I don't remember the exact wording.
Alfonso said, "I want to know, based on Arceus progression in game, do you think he'll replace Kratos?"
No comments.
I don't want to know this.
Yeah. One way or the other. I would say like I'm always careful too, right? Because it's like if I say no comment to something, then it's like, oh, then it does mean something. But no, seriously, like just in general, this is a question that I wouldn't approach with a 10-foot pole, as it were. So sorry, Alfonso.
Just to clarify for everyone at home, none of us know that either. So that's
correct.
It's something we'd all like to find out ourselves about. So,
do you know if costumes are back?
Costumes. Oh, like glamour type stuff. I just used the word glamour.
Well, it was a glamour. Yeah.
Great. Is that what you mean?
Like in God of War 1 and 2, you had the infamous Cod of War. I think it was in 1 as well.
Yeah.
Where he was dressed as a giant fish.
I've not encountered anything like that. I mean, it is cool, like swapping out your equipment. You can equip different chest armor, wrist armor, and waist armor, and all this stuff is really just exquisitely detailed and really vividly rendered on Kratos. So it's fun to change that look and really tap into these really cool objects of like Norse artifice over time. But yeah, nothing like
God of War 2. That was it.
Right. No fish costume.
It's a very different time, Ben. Come on, let's say.
That's true. Yep. I feel like that's at odds with the serious story that they're trying to tell.
Yeah, but it was like a bonus from like it was an unlockable from beating the game on the hardest difficulty.
Well, to be fair, I've not done that, so I can't speak to that. Whether there's a COD suit with it.
I think franchise to franchise, it's something when you take a different tone, you have to be careful with. I mean, Uncharted 4 probably got away with still including some of its little silly gimmicks at the end just because it's Uncharted.
Yeah, but Uncharted 4 didn't include Donut Drake, and that means it's the worst.
Well, and then, I mean, even Dead Space 2 had their, once you beat the game on the hardest difficulty, you had, 3 saves the whole game to do it? Beat it on the hardest difficulty, and if you do, you get that foam finger that he goes pew pew and like kills everything in one hit. So even that serious as a game that was, they still had a sense of humor a little bit in there. But
I do wonder what things I haven't uncovered though, like that. I mean, I think we'll all in very short time here find out as the internet zeitgeist, like the million monkeys of the internet apply their gaming thumbs to this game and figure out its secrets in 2 days. But yeah, I'll be curious. Nothing like that yet though.
I really doubt it, but I wanted just while I was thinking about it to ask.
That'll be in the patch, in the first patch afterwards. They put in
chili patch. Just add God of War for me.
Hank and Bobby Hill skins for the pair of them.
Damn it, boy!
Right.
Also propane. God.
Anyway, yes. So, Kyle, away from here in the writing, where can people catch your musings on such things as God of War?
You know, Twitter's the best place. At Better Call Prahl is where you can find me. My last name is spelled Prahl. Yeah, I have been talking about God of War a lot, and I'm sure I'll continue to talk about it as more people play it, and I can actually kind of join these sort of meaningful conversations with folks. But that's where you can hit me up. If I'm not tweeting about God of War, I'm probably tweeting about Final Fantasy XIV or whatever the latest game to have my attention is, which is probably going to be Ni no Kuni 2, actually, now that I've put this review off my plate.
Yeah, so that's not a bad way to go. Yeah, can't complain there. Cool. Let's go to Garri next. What's your contact details, Garri?
You can contact me at Gaglaush on Twitter. That's Gaglaush.
And how do you say that? Gaglaush? I've always I'm asking the man behind the myth because I've always in my head went Gaglaush, but I don't know what I'm doing. So
yeah, you have to say it in the Russian accent, like speak like Ivan Drago. Gaglaush.
That is one way to do it. I'll say that. That was great. Yeah, and any shout outs, Garri? Sorry, while you're there.
Thanks for Kyle for joining us. Always love to hear about God of War.
Yeah, but thank you guys. I didn't shout anybody out. I'll shout out all.
Oh yeah, sorry, that's my bad. There you go.
No problem.
Yeah, go.
Listeners, Alfonso, thanks for your question that we refused to answer, or Kyle refused to answer.
At least I remembered to bring it up. so please don't hate me.
Alfonso, if you really don't care about spoilers, you can DM me, and then on April 19th, I'll just tell you one way or the other.
No, you mean 20th?
Just send him like a video of the final scene in the game.
Well, it's funny. It's just like you could also just be asking, like, is Atreus a cool character? And I, have opinions on that. But also April 19th, because I think 5 a.m. in New Zealand on April 19th is the first time anyone in the world can officially play it. So PlayStation has told us that that's when we can start posting guides and tips and walkthroughs and everything else.
I was just saying, why you think people are so excited for the game that they're going to change their region to New Zealand just to buy it early?
I bet at least 10 people have done that, yes.
Or you just move to the Middle East where you can get a copy 2 weeks early, it seems. It's usually the way of it.
Yeah, some people are dumb.
And then write a really bad review about it.
Truer words have scarcely been spoken.
That's like the Twitter anthem, isn't it? I think it's people are very dumb.
Yes.
Sorry. Go back to Kyle. If you've got shout outs, that'd be good.
Just cheers to our entire community. Alfonso, as a super fan of PSU, as always. Too bad you couldn't make it to the show today. Would have been cool to have you, but thanks for all your support. Thanks to everyone who read the review. This has been one of my, in terms of traffic and readers, has been one of my higher profile reviews in recent memory, and so I'm just thrilled people have taken the time to read what are always very wordy reviews, so I appreciate it.
It sounds like a game deserving such a wordy review, so that's and people are obviously enjoying reading it, so it's the main thing to take away. Chris, what have you?
Yes. I apparently can no longer hide my identity online, so if people would like to get a hold of me, they can find me at Twitter at Devangel. That's DEVANGIEL. If I can spell my own fucking name right. Or, of course, they can read my reviews and news articles on PSU.com, Chris DeVisser. Shout-outs to Tim, miss you, buddy. Shout-out to Alfonso, miss you as well, buddy. And shout-outs to the fans and commenters and commentators and commies who pay attention to our site and love what we do. And, of course, my wife and kids, thank you so much for your support. And yeah.
Excellent. Good stuff.
I would also like to shout out Chris for me getting him out of bed to write a news article. It seemed important at the time.
It was very important. I'm glad you did, because I wouldn't have seen it otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, it was so shocking that we just had JP ask if we did it. Yeah, good. Mr. Shillabeer-Hall.
Hello. I kind of wanted to talk about Cabounce a bit, but I'll do that next week. Last weekend I was able to play a new sports game on PS4 that's in closed beta, and I had incredibly amount of fun with it. I got to chat with the developers on Discord during the weekend as well. So I streamed it, as everyone said. You can check the previous footage on Twitch, and I put some gameplay on our YouTube. But yeah, I would talk about that more, but it's God of War week, so I'll talk about that next week.
It's fine.
I want to shout out to Phoenix Down Radio, aka Klaus Nightbringer, and Alfonso. I also bring shout out to Talus Marvelous, aka Marvelous Anime on Twitter. You guys know I do a Final Fantasy 14. I'm part of a Final Fantasy 14 podcast with Phoenix Down Radio, Klaus, Saya, and Luna.
I had heard.
This weekend, you got a nice little thank you from Talus. Basically, his local game store, Critical Strike Games, which is criticalstrikegames.com, has made a custom promo code for our podcast. It's a trading card game shop where you can buy Dragon Ball, Final Fantasy, all different types of trading card games. And if you use the code PHXDNRadio, you'll get 10% off your first order. But this doesn't work internationally, so I couldn't order, which makes me sad.
Okay. And you'll put that
That's
in
awesome, though.
Yeah.
Description for the episode as well, won't you, Ben?
Yeah, I will. I'll put it in the description. So, yeah, 10% off your first order if you use our promo code, which is lovely.
Cool.
He'll forget.
Someone will forget something. That's usually how it works. So we just go around in a circle, forgetting things, and we sort of have our way to the end.
Yeah, and the shout at Evolved Mail. Okay, girlfriend's favourite stream at twitch.tv/EvolvedMail.
You know what? I was getting nervous there because you hadn't said it. I could see the skies darkening further. It's nighttime already. I also have to say thank you everyone for being on. Thank you everyone for listening to the podcast. Please do go to iTunes and rate and review us, because that does help. As you probably heard on every podcast ever going. And you can listen to this podcast. You can listen to regular Unchained, which of course currently has the Tournament of the Overrated, where we are knocking games out in PlayStation history that are possibly a bit overrated. That's the gist of it. But it does end up with lots of interesting conversations about how we view very popular games, and it's been some shocking results already in that first round of 64. We're on to the round of 32 next when we come back to that. I'm just happy
the ones I've knocked out. Well,
also, of course, we do occasional wrestling podcasts, which nobody came away well with last week with the WrestleMania weekend for that. There was not a lot of points going around because lots of split decisions meant half points. I go find it because I've got a page here with loads of stuff. Yes, to clarify, over the two pay-per-views, which was 17, 18 matches, Neil and Alfonso got 6.5 points, and Ben and Chris got 6.
Oh, we got 6!
Yes! Wow. You led for a very long time. You won WrestleMania, but yeah.
We did it! We did it, Chris. I'm giving you a virtual bro fist through my monitor.
I'll take your virtual fist anytime, Ben.
Whoa. Nice.
I will point out that at TakeOver you scored 0.5 points. So
I don't care, we won one of them.
Take what you can get, half glass full kind of guy.
That's it. That's the way to see it. Well done.
Plus, what was the score? It's like 6.5 to 6, would you say?
Yeah. Yeah,
there you go. We let you win that one, to be fair.
Yeah, I think that's probably why I was so angry at the end of that pay-per-view, because it's like, look, you've cost me points with your strange booking. Oh dear, I think that makes it 14 points to us and 10.5 to you. Yes, overall.
Yes.
So there's that one. And of course, we'll be back to regular Unchained as we're getting closer to E3, and there'll be all that nonsense going on, I'd imagine.
I still want to do like a special one for E3.
Oh, yes.
Yes. Man. It's like Christmas for us news journalists.
Not if you're writing it. It's like, what do they say? What was that?
Just here, watch the videos.
You're right. It's like Christmas for journalists. Massive hassle.
We're not the kids. It's like Christmas, but we're not the kids. We're the parents trying to make sure everybody has a good Christmas.
And naturally, you get some petulant brats screaming at you for not giving them the right thing. So
and then people go to Microsoft one and get disappointed because it has no things.
They might have Dead Island 2, it seems. So it's all on the up and up there.
I played that 5-6 years ago.
I'd hazard a guess it's not the same game anymore, Ben.
I'm guessing not.
Cool. So yes, we will see you soon. When, I don't know. It depends when we record the next thing, of anything. And of course, the anime podcast will be going up this weekend as well.
I think you put this up first because of how important it is, and I told Alfonso I might. So
yeah, just for Alfonso, we'll put this up.
I might.
He's got an hour, you see.
Well, normally Unchained goes up on a Tuesday.
I'll think about it, Alfonso.
Well, normally Unchained goes up on a Tuesday to give the anime podcast a couple of days.
Oh, okay.
That's it.
You mean people don't listen to both automatically? God.
I know, it's terrible.
Look, if you listen to us, you got to be a fan of the anime podcast. That's just the rule.
Yeah, but I thought they want don't know.
You broke him. You broke him.
It's like fisting.
It's all that fisting.
Out on that bombshell, I say tatty bye.